I hope you've had a great weekend and you were able to get outside and enjoy the weather and get off your screens. Something fun that happened in my life this weekend is I got engaged to Sam Barry, and so that's pretty exciting. And today, what we're doing for Monday is you are going to be listening to an interview presentation with my dad, Mr. Richards. He has been a history teacher for many, many years, longer than you've been alive. And recently, he's been doing some research for the History Channel on a show called The Curse of the Civil War Gold. And I'll show you a little clip of that so that you kind of get a feel for what the show was like if you haven't seen it. He's going to be talking you through primary sources and secondary sources that he used in his own research, okay? So it's all very relevant to Muskegon, Michigan, and I hope you guys really enjoy that, okay? So listen up and hope you guys get a little bit more of an understanding over what's a primary source and what's a secondary source. Okay, students, I'm going to show you a clip from The Curse of the Civil War Gold. This is one of the episodes from season 1. There were too many viewers that tuned into this show, and this is an episode that took place right here in Norton Shores, okay? And I'm going to play a little clip so you can enjoy that.
On the shore of Lake Michigan, located just a few miles south of Muskegon, Kevin Dykstra believes he has located physical evidence of an abandoned Confederate train engine buried some 4 feet beneath the sand. If he can dig an area deep enough and wide enough so that it can be photographed, Kevin is hoping it will serve as proof that will convince fellow treasure hunter and Michigan businessman Marty Lagina to finance what promises to be a very expensive search to find a boxcar filled with lost Confederate gold. After the Civil War ended in 1865, a company called the Florida Railroad reported that a Confederate locomotive had been stolen in the city of Cedar Keys.
Who can steal something from a railroad? Who can steal a train engine? I believe that
Was secretly buried in Georgia.
All right, so my dad, Mr. Richards, is in the blue shirt, and he worked with this man, Kevin Dykstra. They were a team, and the History Channel decided to air their story and the research that they were doing concerning the lost gold that Jefferson Davis had possession of once he was and after he was captured. Where did this gold go? Okay, so it follows the story to Muskegon, Michigan.
To be brought to Michigan by rail. Kevin Dykstra must now face a sobering reality. Even if a stolen Confederate locomotive really does lie buried beneath the sand, it may be too close to the water to be successfully exposed.
I don't believe there's anything more physically that we could do. We brought in 20 people. The sand just keeps washing back in.
Refusing to give up on what could be a historic discovery, Kevin and his team now shift their focus to uncover what they believe to be the abandoned railroad tracks.
We're just under 8 feet. That should have hit it if you were going to hit it.
8 feet down, and still no sign of the tracks?
I know the tracks are there. I have to get down to that.
Does anyone see Miss Richards? There I am. There's my mom. There's my little brother. And there's my sister, and then my other sister is right there.
Railroad track for 2 reasons. One, because I will not let it beat me. I will find it. I will get right to it. And the other is I want to show it to Marty. Got something right there. Sweet. I heard it. Nice. That's got to be the railroad track.
All right, and that's all we're going to watch of episode 2 of season 1. Now we're going to jump to Mr. Richards, and he is going to talk to us about the behind the scenes, the research that went into everything that they found in this show. All right?
Hey guys, my name is Brad Richards, and I'm Miss Richards' dad. And she can show you a picture. She's Miss Richards actually helped me do some research for the TV show that I'm on. Basically, what happened was somebody came through with a theory about some events that happened back during the Civil War era and shortly thereafter. So, getting to primary and secondary sources, well, we know what the history books tell us. We know what the local legends and stories are. But was that the real truth? Is that what really happened? And that was kind of my task as the history teacher on the TV show, was to dig deep into various sources and try to ascertain what really did happen. Because remember, the history books are always written by the winners. The losers don't get their share, don't get their say. And so sometimes you don't get the whole story. So the first thing I did was look at a biography, which is a primary source, written about Muskegon's most famous philanthropist, Charles Hackley. So this book, there was only a few hundred of them printed, and I was able to go online and find my own copy. Charles Hackley was a Knights Templar. There's his family shield and crest, and I found that to be super interesting. I was able to actually, through primary sources, track back through his genealogy to discover that he believed, and there's certainly plenty of evidence to show, that he was related to the Knights Templars of the 1300s, dating back to 1100 in Scotland and England. So much more to the story than what you might originally anticipate. Another primary source that I was able to use was this book here that was given to me from some nice lady out of the blue. This book was written in 1865, the last year of the Civil War. It's called The History of the Great Rebellion. It's not in very good shape, so I got to be careful with it. But, of course, the northern side of the Civil War called it the Great Rebellion. The South had a different term for it, called the War of Northern Aggression. And anyway, I was able to discover in this book, based on a guy that worked for the Wall Street Journal at the time in New York, that the South had millions and millions and millions of dollars of gold, and no one discovered where it went to at the end of the Civil War. So that was a really interesting discovery. And of course, there's been over 1,000 books written about the Civil War and the gold of the Civil War especially, but they're not primary sources. So like this guy here, Jack Myers, wrote a book called Knight's Gold. At the end of the Civil War, Jesse James, the famous outlaw, and a number of his Confederate compatriots dedicated themselves to getting ready for Civil War II. They were going to, when the South, there's a saying called the South will rise again. I don't hear so much anymore these days, but they were stockpiling gold and weapons and supplies all across the country. And some of those have been found, and those findings have been made public. A number of them have been found, and no one said anything. And I've been on the research trail of that over the years as well. I'm just going to show you some random stuff as I've come across. But so this anyways, is an example of a secondary source. This guy and a lot of secondary sources quote primary sources. So if you're smart, you can find those quotes and go to the back of the book, and it'll tell you where they're getting their information from. And sometimes those are primary sources. So then that leads you down the trail even further. You can go check out that primary source, even though you originally got the information from a secondary source. That's how these things work together. You leave no stone unturned when you're trying to get to the bottom of a mystery or determine what actually happened in history. Remember, history is stranger than fiction. These stupid movies like Star Wars and, I love the Marvel movies. I love the Avengers. Those are neat movies. What actually really happened in history is a lot more interesting. Here, Charles Hackley, who claimed he made $3 million in the lumber industry, where? In his own primary source's biography. And that was written by a guy that he sat in his basement many times and told all about himself. And then the book was written 30 years after his death. He claimed he made $3 million on lumber industry. Somehow, he opened up a bank. This is a piggy bank they would give to kids your age when you open up an account in Hackley National Bank. You have a key, and you turn it, and then you can access your coins. A lot of gold went missing after the Civil War. And our theory was that some of it came up here through Muskegon. All right. Let me give you another example of a primary source. There is a volume of like 132 books about the Civil War, officially printed by the North. And everybody knows about that work. But then the South came out with their own. It was called the Confederate Veteran. So you have 25, 26 years of soldiers writing in. Soldiers that actually fought in battles, fought in the Civil War. When they write down their thoughts and their recollections, that's a primary source. They were there. And so there's a number of these, along with the War of the Rebellion, that you can access all online. So nowadays, the books that are more than 100 years old, I want to say, there's an actual real number there. I think it's 100 years, all go online. So you can research and access all these primary sources in many instances online through universities or archives. The federal government maintains the Smithsonian Institute and all kinds of the National Library of Congress, all kinds of primary sources. You can access those yourself, and no big deal. And do a tremendous amount of research. Of course, in my efforts, I did a lot of metal detecting, trying to find certain things. Here's a Union bullet. How do you know it's a Union bullet? Well, since the Union was much more industrialized than the South was agrarian, farming, cotton. The British paid the South a lot of gold to the blockade runners. Where did that gold go? We don't know, but the British really needed the cotton. The South could produce their own guns, and they were very much more industrialized. And so the North, the North was much more industrialized. So the North produced a new kind of a rifle, a lever action that you could shoot a lot more bullets in a hurry. And the South had the muskets where they keep having to jam the gunpowder and the musket balls in there. Huge advantage to the North. Keep in mind, over 700,000 soldiers died fighting each other in the Civil War here on this continent. It was our theory that there was a railroad going to Charles Hackley's office here in Muskegon. And I sent Miss Richards some pictures of finding some tunnels in the Muskegon area, finding a lot of evidence of subterfuge and secret events for whatever reason. Actually had some railroad guys come up and say, there was never a railroad out there on the beach of Lake Michigan. Well, I want to show you something. That's a railroad spike, a modern railroad spike. This is from the Union Pacific line out in Utah, found that. A lot of the gold went out to Utah. Charles Hackley had gold mines in Utah. If you can explain to me why Charles Hackley had gold mines in Utah, I'd be very interested to hear your theory. I think I know. Well, down on Lake Michigan, we found this. So that's a railroad spike from the 1800s. It's a very old railroad spike. So I would call this a primary source too, even though it's not a book. It's an actual piece of evidence from history that proved that there were some interesting things going on, including a railroad right where we thought it would be. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. All right, I'm back. So one of the things that we did was a lot of metal detecting, trying to prove that guys from Michigan actually had the wherewithal and were using tools and had coins from the South. And so one thing that we did with our metal detecting, I already showed you that one bullet, but come across all kinds of little treasures at different locations, whether we were in Georgia by the site of the capture of the Confederate president, Jefferson Davis, or here in Muskegon, or out west. It's interesting. I give a lot of talks to schools like this, to kids your age. And there's one kid that I've noticed on Facebook. Now he's got his own metal detector, and he's out finding all kinds of little treasures and posting it online. And I find that pretty cool. But, I showed you a Spencer 3-ring bullet from a Spencer repeating rifle from the north. Let me show you another one. This one here, if you can see, that one was found at a bloody battle. That one went through a man. Bullets and guns are serious business. They're tools to be utilized. They are not toys. And, this is a very bloody death, a very bloody war. They didn't have penicillin. They didn't have the modern hospitals. We got people all freaking out about a COVID virus. These guys, that would have been like nothing to them. Here's a piece of a Confederate artillery shell. So this landed in the middle of a bunch of Union troops, and Lord knows what it went through. I mean, when it exploded. But you can see this would easily kill a man or a horse. Back in the day, speaking of horses, they had mounted cavalry still in the Civil War. So they didn't have jeeps and tanks. They just had a lot of men and a lot of horses, a lot of blood and muscle and guts. And anyway, I gave Miss Richards a little picture that she might show you that shows you that a guy named Minty had his office in Hackley's bank. Who was Minty? He was the son of General Minty. General Minty was such an incredible warrior. This is the modern cavalry pin that they give to all of our soldiers that are riding in tanks. Now they call our tank riders cavalry. Back in the day, the cavalry was horses. Do you see the crossed saber? The crossed saber right in the middle. It's got a handle. General Minty and his Union troops were so fearsome. They were called the Saber Brigade. And they would gallop their horses into the middle of Confederate troops while being shot at, waving their saber and just cutting and slicing people. Incredible bravery, incredibly, brutal fighting, tough go. Really interesting about Charles Hackley. He did not fight in the Civil War. Of course, not everybody could, for whatever reasons. And the last thing I want to do is cast a disparaging light on a local town hero that's done so much for our town. Okay, it was interesting. He paid for the GAR post here in Muskegon. What's the GAR post? Grand Army of the Republic, they called themselves. This was for the Union troops. There's a statue downtown by Attorney David Bowen's office. It's a little park. It's right by the new county building in the jail. It shows a soldier with only one arm. That's because General Phil Kearny got his arm cut off in a battle and kept fighting. Would not retire, he refused to allow himself to be taken off the battlefield. He kept fighting and leading that troop. That was General Phil Kearny. Well, if you notice here, General Phil Kearny is the war hero for the Muskegon Post, and he's got a small medal. Who's got the big medal? Well, Mr. Hackley. I find that interesting on a couple of different levels. Anyway, so when we were out and about on our TV show, we did find some coins. Some coins that we thought proved our theory. Found Confederate coin right up here in Michigan at the guy's house who captured Jefferson Davis. Also found Confederate coin at the site of the capture. I'm going to show you that coin. But first, a little side departure. I've been coming across some other coins. This coin here is from Emperor Constantine's reign in the Roman Empire. You don't get a chance to hold these very often. This is 330 years AD. So 330 years after Jesus. This is 400 BC. It's from the Greek Empire. It's a bronze coin, over 2,500 years old almost, 2,400 years old. It's so cool to study history. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the widow's mite. This old lady had 2 coins, and she wanted to give money to the poor. Now you think about the people in our country who consider themselves poor. The poorest people in America are in the top 5% of standard of living of anywhere in the world. We are so spoiled here in this country. Don't have a lot of patience for people to complain about this country because we have the greatest country in the world. This was a widow's mite. The widow's mite is a tiny little coin from the Roman Empire. and she gave one of her 2 coins to help the poor people because she didn't consider herself to be poor. It's pretty awesome. So anyway, let's talk about the Civil War coin that we found, and it was a half dime. I'm going to show you where you can see the Confederate. If I can get this to zoom in. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having trouble. If you can see the stars there. So when I pulled this out of the ground, that's the first thing I saw. What is this thing doing? And it was a pretty exciting moment. So I'm going to pause. So anyway, getting back to primary and secondary sources, there's all kinds of different primary and secondary sources. Here's a primary source of a map of a location that we were searching in Lake Michigan for some potential gold bars. And, this map was from that time area. The land today looks nothing like what this property did back in the day at those 2 towns. I was a history teacher at Urbana for a long time. And at one point, I was able to buy this from the Urbana Museum. But newspapers are generally considered primary sources if they're from the exact time when things happened. Now, if you read the newspaper today, they don't always get things right. But having said that, generally considered to be a pretty good source if it's from the day that you're researching. I have a membership of genealogy.com. I also have a membership, newspaper.com. And these are, like I said earlier, they have scanned a tremendous number of newspapers. And so going way back to whenever they were formed, some of these papers were started back in the early 1800s. Our country was founded in 1776. The printing press had already been invented. So, as the cities grew, the desire for newspapers, there was no TV or cell phones or, this kind of stuff. So the newspaper was the mass communication of the day. So anyway, they scanned all those back in there. So, of course, I was able to find out that Charles Hackley and his attorney spent a weekend out in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and a number of other things to the newspaper that, they probably didn't mean to have get published. So, the long and short of it is, studying history is truly fascinating. And I am firmly convinced that everything that you read in a history textbook isn't everything that actually happened. And with your own research, you can find out more, much more. You think about how they summarize whole decades in a paragraph or 2. And people like you and me actually lived during those times and had epic days, just like I'm sure you all have your epic days at Mona Shores Middle School. Well, none of that gets covered. However, with some research, you'll find a lot of interesting stories out there. Good luck. God bless you guys.